Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, David here, and welcome back to another exciting video because Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance previews just came out and we have a lot of information to discuss and opinions to go over about media outlets who played SMT V Vengeance early, and there's a lot of interesting stuff here. So if you're new to the channel, you'd like to stay up to date on all things when it comes to Atlas, SMT, Persona, Metaphor, Infinizio, and more, you're at the right place. Make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell as well. And if you like today's video, a quick thumbs up is always a big help. Now, what I'm doing with these previews or here episodes is I'm going over previews that I thought were interesting after reading them, and I'm going to be pointing out stuff that I think you guys want to hear about SMT V Vengeance / the game that we'll discuss in said episode. And today we have 3 articles, 3 previews that I want us to look at, and the links to those previews are in the description. As always with my videos, sources are always mentioned in the description, so if you want to read those articles yourself, make sure you do so by clicking the link in the description. Now let's start with RPG Site. Now their previews is an interesting run, which was it was written by Colin Black here. Shin Megami Tensei V was flawed but fun, modern take on the franchise hampered by hardware constraints on Nintendo's aging portable platform. It also didn't help that the game concluded development during the peak of the COVID pandemic, which I'm sure caused the scope of the game to be impacted. Now this was already confirmed by the team Maniacs and developers at Atlas, which basically said, hey, we had to get this game out there, it was in development for so long and there's a lot of stuff that we wanted to put in the game that we were not able to, and that's the reason why SMT V Vengeance exists. So he's right onto something. So he's saying he played 2 hours of Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance. In both of our segments for this demo, we were allowed to experience the Canon of Vengeance route that will be exclusive to this new version. The first of these occurred during one of the original game's earliest arc relating to Lamu and the bullied student Sahori. We see the protagonist leave Dahat for the first time with the new character Yoko Hiromine joining you and Bethel, Japan. So new character joining very early. That's interesting to see. I was able to play up until the moment of the original where your school is invaded by demons and the small amount of changes seems promising. Most notable is Taho's scene with you on the dorm rooftop about her friendship with Sahori, now interjected by the presence of Yoko telling her to take more direct and extreme action. Yoko seems like an injection of personality in a pretty docile original cast, and I hope she continues to be as entertaining as she came off in this demo. I adore her. Entirely new was a battle with one of the members of the new antagonist force, Quadistu, which is freaking awesome because that new squad here, the new antagonist force as they're calling them, are all looking super cool and diverse. So it's interesting to see that you'll encounter them very early on, and we're already seeing here early on in the game's early minutes, I should say, story focus. That's always a good. The second half of the demo took place in the new Dahat of Shinjuku, featuring a bit of story entirely unseen in the previous version of the game. Taho and Yoko tag along as you initially explore this new area, and angels continue to threaten your team for reasons unknown to your party. Yoko is inherently skeptical of them, and Taho has to come to terms with them. Later on in the demo, we got to see a bit more of a human side to the other cast members as well, as they all come together to rescue Miyazu Atsuta, a character whose arc originally was confined exclusively to side content and felt separate from the rest of the story, which again was something that came out on it came up in most reviews for SMT V. I mentioned it myself, and I'm someone who adored the game. So our demo took place on the PlayStation 5, where we were treated to a 4K 60 frames experience that almost hurt my eyes after 100 hours of playing the original exclusively on Switch. You can get used to unstable games when you're as frame rate neutral as I am. That doesn't make it any less unstable, of course, and I don't fault anyone who couldn't stomach it on Switch. So basically sharing my opinion here that, hey, the game had issues on Switch. I'm not gonna say that there wasn't any issues. To me, it was fine, but clearly when I look at SMT V Vengeance and how it looks and runs, it's easy to see that, hey, it looks awesome. The game runs incredibly on PS5, and the stylized 3D holds up immaculately at higher resolutions with lightning fast loading times. Vengeance offers new moments of downtime for players too, with the protagonist's cutely called protagonist dorm room and Demon Haunts, which is a new feature that we talked about in another video. The Protag's room doesn't seem too customizable or important, but I really like it when RPGs give you the time to just hang out by yourself. In the second half of our demo, there's even a little fun scene where he and the main leads of the game, Hichiro Dazai and Ryuzuru Hatsuta, hang out and bond. It didn't seem like groundbreaking characterization, but I appreciate the attempt to paint the cast as more humans, which will allow for character drama in the later half of the game as the natural events of Shin Megami Tensei game hit the cast like a freight train. But the humans aren't the only ones getting more characterizations, as you can hang out with any of your currently summoned demons with demon hunts. When you hit a ley line, you can go to Little Haria based on the Dahat you're correctly in. Here the protagonist splits from Aogami and can walk around at his leisure. You can rest on a bench and have talks with Aogami to discuss the events of the story, and after doing so, I was given 3 extra skill points to apply to my character. Talking to demons can give them permanent stat buffs, new skills, and possibly more, so they're making those interactions with characters and demons feel rewarding at the same time, which honestly to me, all of that sounds really awesome. Now let's move on from this demo here and talk about Gamespot's preview by Michael Hyam. Shin Megami Tensei V shows what SMT should be, so very big praise here. As the game subtitles would indicate, the main narrative theme behind the new storyline is about revenge. It flips an existing plot thread from SMT V, weaving it into the story to be much more prominent, and introduces new characters, allies, and villains alike to be the new anchors for that team. Vengeance sows the seeds early on in the game, though much of the game's first half will be quite similar to the original. It incorporates a few twists to fit the extra characters and new story events to set up its branching path. The big addition to the cast is Yoko Hiromone, a somewhat undercover transfer student who's fully aware of the apocalyptic timeline throughout the game and wields her own supernatural powers. And she was part of nearly every story beat that I saw, and that's in a 2 hours demo. So that's a very interesting here. Kind of reminiscent of Persona 5 Royal in a little bit. I can see how there are instances of her presence and dialogue being inserted in ways that don't require complete rewrite of existing conversations. However, she does get dedicated moments and cutscenes that elevated her well above being another character who just tags along, and he even becomes a controllable party member at certain critical points in the story. Yoko is one of the catalysts for the new route that is teased and provoked throughout the story, along with the villainous Karitsu trio, a group of demons who represent a more deranged side of the concept of revenge. In this first part of the preview demo, I got to fight one of the Kwaritsu named Nama, who was one of the several new boss battles, and with Nama having a wonderfully wicked design, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the rest of the group make their presence felt and embody the more twisted side of SMT. It's one example of how the main path integrates new content and tries spotlighting the path towards the vengeance route. Spending 2 hours of what's said to be 75 more hours of gameplay is only going to show me so much. However, getting a taste of the new content in SMT5 Vengeance made me hopeful that Atlus can once again make good on putting out definitive versions and make it worth a replay. The changes and additions specific to Vengeance are emblematic to SMT's attitude, staring amazingly designed new characters and still being unapologetically devilish in its themes and presentation. Very interesting stuff here. Now this final interview by Inverse is clearly going to trigger some of y'all just because of the title. Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance is the Persona 5 fix you've been looking for. This journalist either knows that people will talk about their article because they compared it to Persona 5, or they are clueless and they think it's just a good idea to compare those two. Sadly, Atlus fans, you don't compare anything to Persona 5. That is what you need to do. It's a good article here from Shannon Liao. Like any other Shin Megami Tensei game, Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance is heavy on lore. The main character is godlike and all-powerful, armed with cybernetic suit that can pull off slick moves like Aramasa. There are none who stand closer to the throne than you. Impactful dialogue choices are represented on the screen by a zoom-in shot of the protagonist's face, and you can hover over the options as giant worlds float across the screen. The soundtrack is packed with hits including Creepy Crow's music for shopping and hyped up battle jams. Shin Megami Tensei V isn't without its hiccups, however. The overworld map feels very retro. You're a flat dot on a map and you can walk to each location. The way the navigation works feel like an old school arcade pinball machine, as you have to ping pong between different paths to get to your destination. It's a bit awkwardly designed, and the inconvenience will likely add to your total playtime and lead to potential frustration. The map is a weird clash against the more modern elements, like a well-animated teleportation system within dungeons that beams your character across some skyscrapers. All told, Vengeance looks to be fun enough romp through an overly glamorous versions of Haunted Tokyo. Even if we've largely seen some version of this before, Persona 5 will likely go down in history as one of my favorite games of all time, so it's great to get to revisit a world with grandiose visions. It remains to be seen whether some of the older parts of the game drag down the overall experience, but the gleaming golden eyes of devils and picturesque wastelands might still make this one an entertaining tale to sit through. So this final preview that we discussed clearly was written by a Persona fan, someone who isn't too familiar with SMT, because they're saying they got like issues with exploration in SMT 5 and everything, which clearly could be an issue if you're someone who's new to the franchise. I understand, but it's far from the worst type of exploration that we've seen in terms of like complexity in other SMT titles. So that was a fun read regardless, even if I disagree with a lot of the points that they mentioned. But regardless, most of the previews for SMT 5 Vengeance were positive. Everyone's in agreement that, hey, the game looks better, runs better, and apparently there's a bigger focus and emphasis on story, which is a good. There's even a bigger emphasis on characters with stuff like demon hunts, where you can discuss with some of your party members and characters. You can have them in battle now and everything. So to me, without playing the game, I think I can safely say that SMT 5 Vengeance is pretty much what SMT 5 should have been. I'm very excited to play SMT 5 Vengeance when it releases next month. But what about you? Are you going to pick up that game day one? Let me know in the comment section of this video. Otherwise, I appreciate you watching this video, and you have a great rest of your week, y'all. Bye.